And we're back live in the studio, WLCN, Viewpoint. The lady to my right is the hostess, above all hostesses.
He's just trying to make nice to me, see, because I made him those bars for his birthday.
Yeah, what the heck. And our guest this morning is Chris Miller, prognosticator above prognosticators.
Yes.
And he's proven that. He's got a track record to show that.
He do.
So go right ahead, Judith K.
Okay. I have two things I want to ask you, and you can choose your pick, okay?
Or I'll find a way to tie them together.
You can dance this tune.
Yeah, the new upgrade that was the first since the installation of the installation.
Right.
Yes. And also, you mentioned the weather pattern shift. Why is it happening? So there's two for you. I'll just sit here and talk among myself.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll address your last question first, since we were talking about that, and then I'll go into the other. Yeah, we've seen a weather pattern shift such that instead of the jet stream being built way up into Canada over us, which brought us all the hot weather for July and August, and kept all the rain way off out of our area here, we actually saw that shift a little bit farther back toward the west. And some of that had to do with that as the air gets colder up in Canada this time of the year, cold air wants to sink and move, more toward the equator, toward the central part of the globe. And so as that cold air pushes its way down, it buckled our jet stream and caused it to push west. So now we've got all that cold air from Canada coming down toward us, and the warm air is building up out in the Rockies, the west coast of the U.S. So they're warmer out there, but also drier. The drought has expanded. In fact, if you look at the area of the United States covered by drought, really hasn't changed since July. Now, we've improved a little bit, but where it's expanded is out in the high plains, the Dakotas, down through Nebraska, Kansas. They are just an awful drought right now. They can't buy a raindrop out in that area. So
I remember last winter having heard that it was warmer in Fargo than it was in Miami. Now, that's just wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happens. That warm air just pushed up through the central part of the country. And when the warm air, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like a rubber band, so to speak, or when you take a slinky and it has waves in it, where the warm air pushes up into the plains, and then the cold air from Canada then gets shoved down south over the east coast, and yeah, that's exactly what happened, especially in later February and March of last year.
Is this the definition of global warming?
No.
All right, Al Gore.
No, this is
Eileen Gore.
Yeah, this is something that happens all the time in our weather. So. In fact, we were looking at some things regarding climate change, and there's climate change occurring higher latitudes, parts of Canada, Alaska. In fact, back in September of this year, the ice over the Arctic was at an all-time low. Someone took a picture off the ship north of Barrow, Alaska, and you would normally see some ice out. It was just little pieces of ice. There was no ice sheet out in that area. It had all kind of shifted more toward the North Pole and toward Greenland. So.
Well, is this just further on the business of from year to year, from season to season, things change?
Right.
They always have. They always will. Or is this a doomsday ahead? Because that's kind of the thing we hear scares me to death.
Sure. We don't see any evidence that this is the beginning of doomsday or anything like that. Especially when we look at the hot weather and the droughts, which are tied together, actually. That's why in the clip you played, I talked about how it'd be hot.
Yeah,
you don't get hot weather around here anyway, temperatures in the hundreds, unless you're in a drought. In a typical summer, we don't usually see 100-degree weather. Maybe one day it might pop up close to 100 and then drop back down. But the humidity keeps the air from getting real hot. When you're dry and the ground is dry, the air is dry, then think of the desert. The temperature can shoot way up. And that's what happened to us this past summer. But no, we don't see, we see these things developing in patterns. Our droughts hit us about every 30 years or so. We were due for one. Unfortunately, we get one here about every 25, 30 years. That's just kind of the way the patterns shift, and that's natural occurrences. So even with the hurricanes, there were quite a few hurricanes in the Atlantic this year. But last year, there wasn't very many hurricanes out there. So, we see these shifts in our patterns, but I don't see any, doomsday scenarios at this point.
The heat sure cut into the golf rounds this last summer, I tell you that. Let's get back to this upgrade, this radar upgrade now that Judith K. mentioned there.
Sure. Several years ago, the National Weather Service as a whole looked at upgrading all of our radars, because many of the radars were installed between the late 80s and the mid-90s across the country, the Dopplers that we have. And here in Lincoln, we had ours installed in 1995. And went operational with it late 95, early 96. And besides a few little minor tweaks here and there, we really hadn't had any upgrades or changes to it since then. And it's been a very reliable piece of equipment, probably one of the best run systems we've had. Then we looked at, okay, how can we make this better with the technology that's out there? Mm-hmm. And there's a type of radar, we call it dual pole, and essentially what it is when the radar sends out a signal, it sends it out in a horizontal kind of a pattern. Mm-hmm. This allows us now to put out a signal horizontally and vertically as the radar tilts up and goes around. So we're getting a lot more information back to us, and that's something that the whole Weather Service decided to upgrade to back in the mid-2000s, about roughly 5 years ago. The plans were put forth and finally came to fruition last year when it started getting installed around the country. And we had ours installed just earlier this month. We took our radar down for about 10 days, starting October 1st, mm-hmm. and made the big upgrade. And so far, it's quite a learning curve. It's for our forecast staff. We've gone through quite a bit of training to use the new information, because we have all the same radar information that we've had in the past, but now we have all these new radar products that we've never had before.
It's enhanced.
It's very much enhanced, and where we're going to see a difference is particularly with rainfall. If we get heavy precipitation that might cause flooding, we'll get a better handle as to where those areas are. Because what the radar can do now is it can better tell up in the cloud, is that a raindrop or is that a hailstone? Oh. Or is that a raindrop or a snowflake or a piece of ice or something like that? So in winter,
that finite.
We're going to, yes, yeah, very much. In fact, let's say you look at radar and there's a green and yellow blob of something on the, and you're like, well, what is that? Is that rain? Is it drizzle? Is it a flock of birds? The radar now with the upgrade will be able to look at that and say, okay, well that's mainly small raindrops surrounded by a few bigger ones, and on the edges there are a few birds around there. So yeah, we'll be able to pick all that out.
But what a burden it puts on you and the staff out there, because in order for that system to be all it can be, mm-hmm. you've got to know how to work it front ways and back ways and sideways.
Sure. Yeah, and and in fact, that's part of our job. We don't even see that as a burden, so to speak, because we do this type of thing because we love science and we like exploring things. And for us, we see that as exciting because we're expecting to see some things on there here in central Illinois that maybe haven't been identified before, because this radar was studied a lot in Oklahoma, and they get a lot different weather than we do here. Mm-hmm. So we're thinking that we're going to take a look at that and really study some of these cases and say, okay, what are we seeing on here? What subtle things are we seeing that we can put into our forecasting or put into our warnings to help people? In fact, there's something that's already come out of it. Some of the sites before us that had this installed down in southwest Missouri, this past March, they had some storms move through there at night. I don't know if you remember when Branson, Missouri, mm-hmm. had some tornadoes that hit early in the morning when it was dark. The storm spotters couldn't see them because there was no light yet, and so it was dark. Uh-huh. But there was a particular signal on the radar that we were told anyway from the experiments in Oklahoma that really you're not going to pick up on this with tornadoes unless it's really a big, bad tornado. There were some smaller, weaker tornadoes that were doing some minor damage to homes and thankfully didn't hurt anybody and did damage to tree branches and stuff. And this new radar technology was able to pick up on those, and they could say, I'm seeing a tornado. It's there. It's on the ground, and it's affecting somebody.
How important, though.
Yeah, oh, exactly. Because,
really?
We get 30% of our tornadoes at night here in Illinois. Some of our tornadoes you can't see because you get a big area of rain that gets wrapped around the tornado, and then the storm spotter's like, oh, it looks like a big area of rain. I can't see the tornado anymore. The radar will be able to look at that and say, okay, we can see the debris being lofted in the storm and say, okay, folks, this thing is on the ground. It's doing damage. You got to get out of its way. So,
folks out there in the Etherland, I think they were pretty brave to do that upgrade and all. I thought you probably have to close the doors after Patty Pfeiffer left you.
Oh my! Yeah, I tell you,
there's a girl who gave us the government some significant years of service, and we thank her for that.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, Patty did an amazing job for us, and she really kept things running really good out there. I'll say that much. We really miss her.
Yeah,
because
speaking of staff. How many do you have out there? What can you tell us about your operation without having to kill us?
Oh, no, I can. We're not that kind of government agency. No, no secrets here. We have a staff of 23. 23 at our office. Yep.
Now, do they come? Excuse me for interrupting, but
sure.
Do they come from around the area, like Springfield or Bloomington, or are the most of them right here in the Logan County area?
It's kind of a mix. Now, as far as where we all originally came from, it's all over the country. We've come from all over the country to see, but we've
like
got.
You and I came from Wisconsin, didn't we?
That's right. That's right. But great place. But. And in fact, a few of my other coworkers came from Wisconsin.
Is that right?
Yeah, there's 4 of us from Wisconsin, so we breed good weather forecasters up there. But
right.
We have 23 out there.
There's 23, and some of them are in the Bloomington area, some in Lincoln, some in Springfield, a few in Peoria. So we're kind of scattered around here, central Illinois. That's the nice thing about having the office centrally located here in Lincoln, because we've got cities all around us, plus right here in town.
Oh, it's a gem for us to have here.
Yeah.
It really is.
And then we really we enjoy being here. It's a good location. It's a very good location. And of the 23 people that we have, we were given kudos to the military folks. We have several veterans that work for us. In fact, I'd say, just off the top of my head, I think it's about anywhere from right around 30% of our staff veterans. Military.
Got their training in the military.
Got their training either in weather through the Navy or the Air Force. Those are the 2 big weather branches of the military. Or in electronics. We have in fact, everybody on our electronics staff is veteran. It's and at any given time at our office, like right now, there's quite a few people working there. But even in the middle of the night, there's 2-3 people there constantly. That's one of the most commonly asked questions I get is, well, you guys, you close the door at night, right? No, we're there 24/7. We have somebody there every day. It doesn't matter if it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, or the middle of August. We have somebody there all the time. At least 2, oftentimes 3 people. But when the weather gets bad, since we do watch 35 counties in central and eastern Illinois, because we go all the way to the Indiana border where we watch the weather, then we'll increase our staffing. We'll go from 2 or 3 to 7, sometimes 10. We have quite a few folks coming in.
Well, that's a third of the state.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we have exactly 1/3 of Illinois that we watch. And we've had instances before, especially this time of the year in the fall, where down southern Illinois, Effingham down to Olney and those areas, Lawrenceville, where we're watching storms that could have tornadoes. And then up toward Peoria and Galesburg, we have a winter storm warning with near blizzard conditions and ice over us and everything in between. So, it's definitely challenging in this part of the country where the weather changes so much. It's
you know,
interesting.
Judith, to avoid taking another physical science course in college, I took Meteorology 101.
Oh.
I remember the Beaufort scale and the cumulonimbus, and that's about it. Oh, Cirrus, I remember Cirrus.
Cirrus, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, if
That's what comes in boxes.
if you can remember cumulonimbus, you've got it half beaten there. Those are the ones that bring us the most weather here.
Yeah, speaking of that, seriously, Sandy, they talked about it was so horrendous, so large, as a result of more than one weather system.
Right.
They had that weather system off the coast coming in, and then we had weather systems inland going to that direction. Am I correct in that?
That's correct. I don't know if anybody remembers. I think it was last Thursday where the temperature dropped so suddenly that one evening. Yeah, the temperature dropped, I think, 20 degrees in an hour or less. That weather system was slowly kind of working its way toward the Appalachians and the East Coast, and that's the same weather system that combined with Hurricane Sandy and the remnants of that storm. And you just had all these things coming together. Usually when a strong jet stream comes down from Canada, it'll break a hurricane apart. Hurricanes don't like strong jet streams because they got to move along kind of slow, and the jet stream will break them up. But this one, once it made landfall, then the jet stream started to impact it, and then it just kept exploding as far as a big storm. And it was they're calling it I think the Weather Channel was calling it a superstorm. And
yes.
Yeah, it was the impacts were felt far and wide. And in fact, some people were saying to me, well, isn't this being overblown? Don't you think people are hyping this up too much? No, because this is a big one. And and that's the thing, is we've studied hurricanes, we've studied tornadoes, and we're telling folks when the Weather Service starts hyping things up like this, we mean it.
And the 55 poor souls who lost their lives are probably among those that we're saying, is this being hyped too much? And when you hype a tornado here or a hurricane there, that's not a joke. That's not funny. If you say go to the basement, that means the basement. That doesn't mean go on the back porch and watch and see what's happening for a while.
Yeah, and that's because our upgrades to our radar and technologies we have with satellite and our forecasting has gotten so much better that it's just very rarely anymore will we say there's going to be a big storm and nothing happens. That's extremely rare because we balance that. We're going to look at the storm and say, I don't want to say, hey, folks, this is going to be a bad one. Oh, look, nothing happened. We balance the communicating it versus what we think is going to happen.
Yeah. No Chicken Little business.
No. And just like the blizzard we had a year and a half ago, we were telling people this is a big one. It had its impacts.
Chris, you said something early on about this is probably going to be a cold winter. Is that the good news or the bad news?
I guess it depends how you look at it.
It's good news for Ameren.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
and it's good news as far as some of the pests, the bugs, and things that so we can get a harder freeze than what we had last winter. So it's good from that respect. It'll be good if we can get keep a lot of moisture in at least the top few inches of the soil, and then freeze the ground and lock it in so there's something there in the spring to help in planting season. So
what's your guesstimate on snow?
That's always a tough one. Snow is always tough because that storm moves this way, that way a little bit could mean the difference between a whole lot of snow for us for the whole winter and just a little bit. So that's always a hard one. Some people ask me, they say, I heard it's going to be like the worst winter we had in 10 years for snow. We don't see any evidence of that at this point, but we can safely say there's going to be more snow than we had last year.
Well,
but I'll tell you, but if that's a safe one.
Aloft has driven the big hand up to 9 o'clock, which tells us we have to get off the air.
Oh, heck.
The weatherman, with a great exception here across from us, Judith. The weatherman is a prophet who is always right, except in his timing. And I am Bill Gossett, and I approve of this program and Judith K. Busby.